Alright, so this is my first attempt at, talking to you guys. This is one of my first videos on the channel, if not just my very first video. And it should be interesting. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I'm not sure if I'm going to edit it. I don't know what's happening. But we're going to try. So, if you saw the title of the video, you likely know that this is about Silent Hill 2, so obviously spoilers for Silent Hill 2. If you don't know anything about it, go play it if you can. It's pretty hard to find. If you can't get to it for whatever reason, I highly recommend watching a full playthrough or at least a retrospective or something that covers it heavily, because just idly watching it in the background or something isn't going to do it justice. Now, with that out of the way, I have a few topics, 4 topics actually, that I wanted to talk about for Silent Hill 2. Yes, so, first I wanted to focus on James Sunderland for a little bit, and this is unscripted. I just have the talking points of the various, just the categories that I wanted to talk about. Later in the video, or if you're listening to it, the podcast type of thing, we'll get to the endings and talk about each individual ending and my interpretation or analysis of it, but that'll be closer to the end of the video. So, first I wanted to talk about James Sunderland. So, of course, James, James is a very sympathetic character, and you don't hear many people talk about it, but I was thinking about it today, and he's a murderer. He murdered his wife. Now, whether he suffocated her out of love, out of not, being unable to bear it anymore, everything that had gone on with him and her, and how she was acting, how she had changed over the years, or months, one of the two, that she was in the hospital, hospitalized and bedridden. Maybe it was because of that, maybe it was because of his pent-up, sexual need, his lust, which is reflected by the nurses, of course, or just something like that. But for whatever reason, he murdered his wife, and I think not enough people really pay attention to that, or really take that in, because James did a bad thing. People realize that. James Sunderland did a bad thing. And Silent Hill 2, the entirety of the game, is... it's a lot of things, but it's partially, and I might dare to say primarily, his journey through overcoming the murder that he committed and got away with, overcoming his apparent tendencies, overcoming the his break from reality that caused him to murder his beloved wife Mary, who he did love. Some people might say that James didn't love Mary, because James doesn't love Maria, probably. And I mean, he killed her, but I think he killed her because he knew what she was like. He knew how Mary was, how she was before the sickness got her, whatever disease it was, or something like that. I'm not sure it's ever stated. I believe personally that James killed Mary more out of, well, it wasn't for her benefit. It was definitely for his, and that's why he feels guilt about it. It was definitely just for his benefit, not for hers. But though he may have, I know he felt sympathy for her, but in killing her, I think he was primarily trying to preserve the memory of her and preserve his love for her, because he had disdain for her at the end of her illness. And that's one reason why he killed her. It's because he I think at some point in the game he actually states that he hated her, and he hates himself for hating her. But she turned on him. He cared so much for her. He visited her so much in the hospital, and there's nothing he could really do for her, but he tried. He was there for her, and he tried, and she spat in his face, metaphorically. Um, even with his efforts, and that's hurtful. I'm not justifying him killing her, of course, because it was murder, and murder is wrong. But James is sympathetic. I find him to be very sympathetic, as the player is supposed to, as the audience is mostly sympathetic, and while James isn't necessarily a likable guy because of his traits and characteristics, personality wise, not physically or anything. Um, at least the way that he's conveyed in the game, and maybe that's just with the animations, maybe that's just with the voice actor, I don't know. But he is charming, at the least. He has that level of charm, which is more than you can say for a lot of characters across franchises. So he loves Mary, and that's why he being James, comes to Silent Hill in the first place, is because he thinks he can see Mary again, even though he knows she died 3 years ago. Now, he's repressed the memory of him killing her, but he knows she's dead. So it's an interesting twist, because you don't think about the player isn't supposed to know that the player is supposed to know that Mary's dead, but not how she died or anything about it. And then gradually you learn the illness, and so you're like, oh, maybe the illness killed her or what. But there's this layer of mystery around it. And that mystery works really, really well. I think primarily because externally from that issue, from that knowledge, the game is shrouded in mystery. When you walk around, there's mist everywhere. You can't see anything. When you go in buildings, it's dark. You can only see so far. The camera angles only allow you to see certain things. That's a staple of survival horror in the 90s and early 2000s, but especially for the greats of it, the original Resident Evil, Silent Hill 4, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 1, all of that stuff, and it really adds to that mystery on a meta level of what killed Mary, and then it's revealed that James killed Mary, and it all just sort of clicks, and it makes sense why he's here, everything, because people don't go to Silent Hill unless, except for the first game, no, if I phrase it like this, including the first game, there's something seriously wrong that's happened to them, or that they've done. And so that works for the first game too. I despise the first game because, this is a bit off topic, but I despise the first game because it doesn't follow in with the same level and direction with the psychological themes as the other 3 games made by Team Silent do. Even 4. People criticize The Room a whole lot, but I like it with its commentary on, I don't know, like sexual situations, isolationism, voyeurism, things like that. It really, Silent Hill has never been one to shy away from rough topics to talk about, and I really appreciate that, because so many games do not even try, but especially ones that do try handle it so poorly. But I kind of despise the first Silent Hill because it just chalks up to what we now have, which is so common in the 2020s, which is just yet another pixelated survival horror game that's kind of fun, kind of scary. You run around, you have to kill this god. Oh, you're birthing a god. Oh, man. And And maybe it's just because of the time period that I'm in now, but that is so cliche, which is kind of funny, but it's so cliche. And it wasn't then. It was a twist then, it was a big deal then, and so many of the games that we have now were based on that. That's fine. But it's just so much, you know? And, so I kind of hate Silent Hill 1 for not having that psychological aspect. Now, to the same extent, I understand it has that, and I understand the horror of it. I still get scared by it. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm saying I don't like it as much as 2, 3, or 4 for the reason that it doesn't dive into the sorts of things that the later games would. Silent Hill 1 crawled so that Silent Hill 2, 3, and to a lesser extent 4 could fly. Not even run, they flew. I think a lot of people will agree with me on that, and I think a lot of people will disagree or have counterpoints or something to what I'm saying, and that's fine. Feel free to have Discord in the comments below. Discourse. Sorry, I think I have something of a cold, so if I cough, I do apologize, and if my voice is not as stellar as I think it sounds right now, that's why. So that's a little bit about James Sunderland, and that is, in without context, it doesn't make much sense, and that's one reason why I said you should learn about it before listening to this. Is because, you know, that's kind of deep stuff. It's more niche. But I've gotten off topic. I was talking about Silent Hill 1. We're talking about Silent Hill 2 today. Not 3, not 4, not 1. We're talking about 2. My favorite horror game. And my favorite Silent Hill game. So, James Sunderland. What else is there to say about him? I mean, there's so much else to say about him, but what else do I want to say right now? I absolutely love the scene with the opening scene, with him with the mirror. And mirrors are actually something I wanted to talk about right now. That's a small little segue into the second topic of this podcast episode video. And so what about mirrors? Well, we open with a mirror. Mirrors in European folklore. I don't know about Japanese folklore. I don't know nearly as much about it. But the creators of Silent Hill, Team Silent, clearly pulled from alchemical sources. They pulled from Western mythology, and they pulled from all sorts of things. Christianity, all sorts of different stuff to inspire the mythology and philosophy of the Silent Hill series. That's no secret. So I think, I think it's even, it's a Japanese perspective for certain, but I think it has less to do with Japanese mythology and culture and things than it does with Western, which is interesting, which makes sense because it's set in America. I believe it's set in New England somewhere, maybe. I know the real-life place is set in the Mid-Atlantic in Centralia, Pennsylvania, which is basically right in the middle of Pennsylvania. I've actually been there, and it's very interesting. Maybe I'll talk about that next episode or something. But I think a lot of it was inspired by, what is it, like the mist in Maine? Stephen King sort of stuff, you know, Maine up there, it's very foggy, that sort of thing. So I'm guessing that's where it's supposed to be set. But I did look into it a while ago, and I can't remember where the town of Silent Hill is supposed to be set in canon. I think, wait, in the movies, it's in West Virginia, I think. And then it's somewhere in New England or the Mid-Atlantic in the games. Which, setting it in West Virginia has got to be a joke, because I've been to West Virginia, and it's not scary, but I could definitely see the aesthetic with certain parts of Pennsylvania or the Mid-Atlantic, or further north with Maine and like I said, the rest of New England. I can definitely see that with the climate and the weather and all that, no hate to West Virginians. Don't worry, love you guys, but yeah. Anyway, that was a little bit off topic again. I do apologize, but this is supposed to be a rambling sort of channel with a rambling sort of video, so it's only natural is basically my excuse. So, back to what we were talking about. What were we talking about? Yes, the opening. The opening of Silent Hill 2 is just... I just love it. I love everything about Silent Hill 2. I have basically no complaints whatsoever about Silent Hill 2, but except that it's not available more easily and to more people. But the opening with the mirror in the grungy, dirty bathroom, it's just amazing. I love it. And the mirrors are specifically what I wanted to talk about for my second point. It took us a while to get so there. In European folklore, I don't know about other folklore, I don't know about non-Western sources or anything, but in European folklore, mirrors are a gateway to an other world, not the other world. The other world of Silent Hill is definitely a topic for another time, but it is very chthonic compared to some other worlds. It's kind of similar to the Norse or Celtic underworld, but like I said, that's a discussion for another time. But mirrors are commonly portals to other dimensions, other realities, parallel worlds, you name it, that sort of thing. And you see it all over in horror and mystery, supernatural mystery, sort of thrillers or whatever, even extending to the, I put in quotations, kids movie Coraline, and that sort of thing, the idea of mirrors and doorways to being portals to other dimensions. And so I think the mirrors in Silent Hill 2 especially, but it extends out to Silent Hill 3 and perhaps even the other games, but I can't think of any examples right now. Mirrors really, they mean something symbolically, and I'll talk about what that is. So, the mirror in the opening scene, James motions his hand in front of his face, which is one of my favorite, like, motions ever, like, in an animated game like that. Like, I think it's motion capture, whatever. I love it. It's beautiful, especially for the PS2. How it's so limited in graphics makes it even more uncanny, and that's part of what I love about Silent Hill 2. One part of it, and so the uncanny feeling of James moving his hand in front of his face in the mirror. It's like he's wordless too, so you don't know really what's going on if it's serving as your introduction. But looking back on it, it makes me think that he's sort of trying to peer into himself. He's trying to look into the void that is his soul right now. He doesn't know why he's here, really. I mean, because he's looking for his dead wife. Mary, could you really be in this place? I mean, no, she couldn't, and he knows that. But he doesn't know what he's going to find. So he doesn't really know why he's here. He doesn't know what to do, and what to do, or anything. And so he's just sort of feeling right then. He's just taking in what he's about to do. He's about to go explore this seemingly abandoned town, because that's a great idea. This little town that they used to visit, and poor James, poor murderer James. So I really think the mirror scene, he's looking into himself. He's trying to embrace his Jungian shadow. And if you don't know what I mean by that, very, very simply, correct me if I'm wrong, but very simply, the Jungian shadow, the idea of the shadow, is the parts of the person that that person has not incorporated into themselves. It's all the cringe parts, it's all the bad, negative traits that you don't accept about yourself, everything like that. And part of the alchemical process, as I understand it, to Jung at least, is to incorporate that shadow into yourself and become a better person for it. If I'm wrong about any of that, please correct me, but that is my understanding of it. So I find that kind of interesting because from right off the bat we have just this symbolism. Now, James doesn't look any different in the mirror than he does in reality, which is interesting because in Silent Hill 2, the mirrors don't really change that frequently. They don't show a different perception of reality. They don't. Reality is changing around the person, so the mirror sort of reflects what is real. If that makes sense, at least how I understand it. So James is desperately trying to claw at himself by doing that hand motion in front of his face and trying to understand himself, as well as just not just who he is, but what he's doing there, and all of the negative things about himself. He's making an attempt at it in that motion, and he's really pouring into himself and trying to see with that look, like, who am I really? That sort of thing. That's what I get from it. I will also note, I found this out very recently and was shocked and excited to know that if you screen cap that, if you take a picture of that scene right there, and braiden the image, you can actually see James's eyes, because of course they're under shadow, which just lends credence to the shadow thing and the alternate reality and such that I was talking about, and the negative parts of him being shrouded and all of that, and him trying to accept that. But looking at looking at the brightened picture, you can actually see he's not looking at himself in the mirror, he's looking at the player, which is a detail that just blew my mind and got me thinking. And I think that was not accidental. I think that was absolutely put in there intentionally. And what I think that means, because I think it means something, of course. I think everything in Silent Hill 2 means something. I think it was done very specifically. I think what that means is just at the beginning of the game, if you can notice that, it's telling you this isn't a story, this isn't a fictional story. This isn't a story about some random guy, anything like that. This is a story about humanity. This is a story about the human experience, and as so many others have pointed out, James is sort of an everyman, but each of the characters represent a different archetype, and so they're not even really characters. They're certainly not people. They're types of people, or personalities of a person, parts of one person, if that makes sense. So James is looking directly at the camera. He's not looking at himself, which is a small meta sort of way to say, you are James. Like, you play as James, of course. You don't play it in first person, you play it in third person. You're watching what James is doing, but you're controlling him. You are James. Everyone has done something that they regret. Everyone has had nightmares. Everyone has made mistakes. Maybe not as significant or as illegal as killing your spouse, your dying spouse, but everyone has some sort of trauma that really weighs on them. And I think that's what Silent Hill is about. It's a hero's journey sort of thing. It's a transformative experience, and ultimately it's for good if you don't die during it, which we'll get back to. But Silent Hill forces people to confront their fears. It forces them to, but more importantly than bringing out horrific monsters and terrible places and environments, it forces people to acknowledge the bad parts of themselves, the negative traits, the bad qualities they have, that sort of thing. Forces them to acknowledge their wrongdoings, their suffering, their everything like that, and either accept that fact, or, well, really, it just lets them deal with it however they wish to deal with it. It doesn't shoot. It doesn't decide for them, unless you die to the monsters. What that could mean, I have no idea. I just thought of it as I was saying this, and I've got to think more on that. But I do know what the dying at the end means, or at least I'll speak on it later. So, back to the mirrors. There's one other time. There's 3 points that I'm thinking of. Spoilers for Silent Hill 3, if you didn't read the description right here. Spoilers for Silent Hill 3. There's 3 mirror encounters that I can pull right off the top of my head when I think of Silent Hill. 2 are from Silent Hill 2, 1 is from Silent Hill 3. Of course, everyone knows what I mean, if you know Silent Hill 3, what I mean by Silent Hill 3 with mirrors. It's the mirror room, you're locked in the room, the sink starts filling up with this blood sort of stuff, visceral, horrible sounds, disgusting, nasty sounds that freak me out, even, and I was about to say Alessa, oh my god, and Heather is forced to watch as she transforms, as her mirror self transforms into something horrific, which is both commenting on just like James, how broken she is and how horrible she is right now at that point in the game, where she hasn't accepted her negative qualities and everything, as the mirror freezes, and she does not. She gets to move around in the mirror, stays a still image, meaning that it's a snapshot of her in time, at a point in time, but it's also foreshadowing for what's to come with her birthing God and everything like that, and how she would feel about that, how disgusting that would make her feel. And so that's Silent Hill 3. That's the most significant mirror scene in Silent Hill 3, obviously. But in Silent Hill 2, there's that one that I talked about, which is the most talked about, and then there's the one with Angela, where Angela is lying on the ground. She wants to kill herself, but she can't, with the knife. She can't take that plunge. And James tries to console her, but he's not the best at it, and she ends up just telling him to go away, if I remember correctly. And he does. And Angela, in that moment, is just sort of looking at the knife, but she's also looking at herself. She's trying to come to terms with the person she knows she is, because Silent Hill has forced her to examine her past and examine her behavior and her attitudes and everything, and to confront that. And her choice for the end is one that we'll talk about, we'll discuss, that I find similar to one or two of the endings of Silent Hill 2. And I find it very interesting that Angela has the knife positioned where she's looking at the knife, but she's also sort of looking at herself. It's this choice of life and death, of the knife or her face, accepting who she is, or giving in to the terrible, terrible, horrible feelings that she's feeling, and being so overwhelmed by it that she just can't go on anymore. And of course, that's the one she chooses, very unfortunately. There is no happy ending for Angela. She accepts her, I put in quotes, fate that she thinks the town is trying to tell her, which I don't believe it is. And she gives up. And that's a tragedy. And the game frames it as one, rightfully so. And I'm happy. I'm happy that it hits emotionally, you know. And I don't have much else to say about Angela right now, except for that mirror scene, because the mirror allows her, you know, she could just be looking at the knife, but she's looking at a reflection of the knife and a reflection of her own face, which allows her to see herself. And she can see, sorry about that, she can see her choice, her choices, I should say, of life or death, of choosing to embrace who she is and what she's become, and along the way, or there's an easy, in quotations, way out, which of course is what she chooses. And the mirror forces her to see that, similarly to the mirror at the very beginning when James is trying to accept that part of himself. It's a similar sort of thing. Angela is trying to come to terms with how she's been, what she's done, what she's experienced through life, but Angela represents what James could end up doing, is just giving up, which is one of the endings. I think that's a good segue for what we're going to be talking about right now, which is the endings. So, I have it's not exactly a wiki article pulled up. This is from silenthillmemories.net. It's a very good site. I highly recommend checking it out. I wanted to go over the endings because I couldn't remember all four, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, there's more than 4 endings and whatever. And then there's also the Born from a Wish ending and stuff like that. So we'll see if we get into those, but I really want to talk about the main 4 endings, especially one in particular. So I'm going to read over this a little bit and go through it. Alright, so there's the Leave ending, and it says, to receive this ending, James must act as if he wants to survive and complete his journey while not showing too much focus or attention on Maria or the memory of Mary, which is very important. This is the most likely ending you will achieve by playing the game normally or with a quick speed run. And that is interesting, because that sort of symbolizes James wants to move on. You know, he wants to stay alive and he wants to move on, which is good. That means that he's changed. That means Silent Hill worked, essentially, the way I see it. Silent Hill achieved its goal and lets him go happily, in quotation marks, happily. Well, I think that's one of the happiest endings, maybe. I mean, it's not real happy, but he gets some closure talking with Mary, even though it's not real, it's all in his head. The whole thing's in his head, most likely, so, you know. Then there's the Maria ending. So I didn't have much to say about that. That's the happiest ending, I think, is the Leave ending. He gets out, and he's changed. Hero's journey sort of stuff. The Maria ending is more interesting. You will receive this ending if James shows a lot of attention and comfort towards Maria, thus developing a bond with her instead of holding on to Mary's memory. A lot of people have talked about this, and analyzed it so much, and that's fine. I'm gonna take a crack at it. So, Maria, I haven't really talked much at all about Maria in this video, and that's for a reason. Maria is a topic all unto herself, and a subject for another time. But Maria represents, I think, and many people think, what James wants. He wants his wife to be alive. He wants things to not just, go back to the way that they were, but he wants Mary to have been different. Maria represents a more, what's the word? I wanted to say sexual, but that's not the right descriptor. A more alluring, a more active partner in the relationship and everything, more caring partner, and I'm gonna get demonetized for this. A more submissive sort of partner, a more stereotypically feminine partner, the opposite of him, essentially the archetypal female, I guess you could say. That's what he wants Mary to be, and she was not like that. At least not to the extent that James wanted. Maria is almost to an extreme degree. So much so that it frightens and annoys James. It's another part of the horror. Maria herself, her existence and her personality is another part of the horror of Silent Hill. James has to confront his dark desires with the nurses, with Pyramid Head representing him, all of that sort of thing. But Maria is yet another one of those. She's just like Pyramid Head or anything else. She's the dark reflection of Mary, but she's not just the dark reflection of Mary. She's the reflection, the over over exaggerated reflection and desires of what James wanted Mary to be. And if he can't accept that, and if he tries to move on with Mary, then he hasn't learned anything from his journey in Silent Hill. He has, and I think it's such a common ending to get, because it's such an easy pitfall to fall into. Is he fell into the dream, essentially. He's lost in Silent Hill with her, and there's even Maria coughs at a certain point, I think near the ending, and so it's almost sort of foreshadowing, and she needs to lie on a bed at one point, and it's almost sort of foreshadowing that the same thing is going to happen to her that happened to Mary, which makes sense if Maria is a figment of James's imagination or a construct created by Silent Hill, then she can't live on forever. None of the constructs of Silent Hill have. None of the people in Silent Hill do. Nobody's immortal there or anything. But also how Silent Hill is a reflection of reality, and Maria is a dark reflection of Mary, then she's going to have something similar to what Mary had, maybe even worse, because to add to the horror that James feels, it could be even worse because he didn't learn his lesson. It's a worse punishment the second time around, which would be tragic. But it's so easy to go through bad experiences like this and not learn from them, and I think that's what Team Silent was trying to get at with this ending. And another thing that people have talked about with this ending is James is betraying Mary's memory. And that is that is, for me at least, a very touchy subject, because James is a widower, like it or not. He's a widower. He did murder his wife, but he is a widower. And while there should be some time allowed to be able to grieve, I think that it's not at all a problem to move on to another romantic partner or something like that after your previous one dies. I don't see that as a problem. And I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Definitely not doing that. I don't think most of the commentators or theorists or whatever even thought of this, much less had any ill intent with this sentiment. But it's something I wanted to discuss because it's what I thought of. So I think one way that it could be interpreted is in a good way, the Maria ending is that James is moving on with someone new, and so he's sort of gotten past his thing with Mary, which is good, but and I think shows some level of growth, even if he hasn't learned his lesson, like we talked about. But it's because he latches on to this idealistic, unrealistic representation, this memory, this figment of Mary that never existed and never will exist. And James chasing after that is bad. that's bad. And I understand where people are coming from with dishonoring Mary's memory, but I think that might get into dangerous territory with a widower marrying twice, or finding love after grieving the death of a loved one, something like that, after death of a significant other or spouse, that sort of thing. And again, I'm not saying that anybody thought that consciously or that they had any ill intent with that. I just wanted to bring that up. And with Mary's memory, I can kind of see how it is sort of dishonoring Mary's memory because Maria is Mary, in a way. She's what James kind of wants in Mary. That's what Maria is. So by moving on with a look-alike who's just more of what you wanted, the perfect version, if you will, which I don't believe she is, but that is disrespectful to the person. If that was a thing you could do in real life, I think that would be pretty disrespectful to the to the person that you had married or were dating before, who had died. I think that would be pretty terrible. Fortunately, it's not, but And so I can see what people mean about that, disrespecting Mary's memory, but I still don't like that interpretation. I feel like that's the more common interpretation, and I dislike that interpretation more than I like what I said about Mary being James not having learned his lesson, and Maria being the idealistic, unachievable goal that James is chasing after. So if you want to get this ending, spend 10 minutes or more near Maria. Makes sense. Bump into Maria less than 3 times. Okay. Protect Maria from monster attacks. Makes sense. Check back on Maria in hospital room S3, which I believe once you do that, she'll be gone, which lends further credence, I believe, to the idea that she's not real. Try to re-enter cell to see dead Maria in the labyrinth twice. Yeah, I forgot she dies. Pyramid Head kills her, which is interesting because that's a mirror. Going back to the mirrors, Pyramid Head is a mirror of James, obviously, but Pyramid Head, what is it? Penetrating. I use that word intentionally. Maria, and killing her through that is symbolic. The penetrating is symbolic sexually, and of course, and that sort of discussion. But him killing her is reflective of what we learn later on, that James killed Mary, which I didn't even think of until just now. I don't think many people thought of that. If you did, good for you. But wow, I didn't even consider that. I was like, why did Maria die? Is it just for more trauma? To dump more trauma on James? No, it's what happened in real life. James killed Mary. Pyramid Head kills Maria. It's the counterpart. It's a mirror. The whole thing's a mirror. That's why it happens across from him. He's eye to eye. James is eye to eye with Pyramid Head, as Pyramid Head stabs Maria and kills her. And so going back to see Maria, dead Maria, is interesting because it means that he really cares about Maria. He doesn't care as much about Mary. He cares about Maria and wants to see her okay. And his inability to save her in that moment is heartbreaking to him in that. Alright. Let's move on. Okay, so... yeah, let's go over this next one next. So, I teased this earlier in the video, but now I'm actually going to talk about it. This is called the in-water ending. This is my favorite one, and also what I think is the most tragic one. And this says, in order to receive this ending, James must act in a suicidal or reckless manner while also keeping a strong attachment to Mary, which is interesting. It's very, very important to the game. And I think it might even, maybe, out of the three main endings, it might even be the canon one. That is just speculation. There is no solid canon one. We never see James again or anything like that. So it's just speculation. But I think that may be what actually happened. Let me explain why. So, if you don't know, the in-water ending has James, like, try to leave Silent Hill, but it just sort of overcomes him, and he just kind of drives off into the lake and drowns himself, which is very dark, and it's very sad and everything, and James, as much as the Leave ending shows James working through his grief, working through the idealized memory, the idealized version of Mary's memory, and what actually happened, how she actually became with the boss fight and everything like that, and moving on from that, accepting that she's gone, that he did it, and that he can still move forward from that, is the best ending. But, and it's one of the most common endings. And then the Maria ending is James's inability to either to grasp or to accept what he's done, and that there's not any hope for him moving forward when it comes to getting Mary back. And so he settles for the next best thing. Or, rather than settling for the next best thing, he tries to move on, but falls into the pitfall of an illusion. He falls for an illusion. Double entendre. Did you like it? So, Leave ending is him getting out and changing. Maria ending is him not getting out and not changing. The in-water ending is him getting out and not changing, not accepting what he's done, not accepting. He can't accept that he killed Mary. He can't live without her, something like that. And so it goes back to the thing with Angela. Angela's thing is almost foreshadowing, as I said. With him, it's a failed James, you know. She's a failed James. And so James, when presented with what Silent Hill presented, you know, there... Sorry, somebody's calling me. Jeez. Let me take this one. Just one second. Alright, sorry, I'm back. What was I saying? Oh, God. I gotta remember. Oof. Yes. So Angela is sort of, as I touched on, Angela is sort of a failed James. She, unfortunately, very unfortunately, Angela The scene with the mirror and the knife, I talked about how Angela has the choice between death and life. She was looking for her her mother, and she can't find her. She's dead. She can't find her. And Angela, rather than being able to accept her reality and move forward, like with James in the Leave ending, she kills herself, which is very sad. And James can fall into that as well. James can leave Silent Hill while not learning his lesson. What I mean by that is grief. When something bad happens to someone, you need to grieve over it. Pushing it down, repressing it is not healthy, and it will negatively have adverse effects on you, and will negatively affect you, whether you want it to or not. And so James has repressed not the memory of Mary, but the death of Mary. And the best idea is for him to let that go, let Mary go, and move on from it. But it's very possible, and I might even dare say common, that you can't move on from that. That a person just can't get out of that grieving mind state, or headspace. They can't get to the acceptance level. And that may cause suicidality. I'm not a professional, by the way. I'm mostly talking from my own experience, but I'm also talking from things I've observed. Don't take me as a medical professional, but I'm not talking out my ass. And so Angela can't accept that, and while she doesn't kill herself with the knife, she does take a much more passive, instead of taking her death into her own hands actively by killing herself with the knife, she walks into the fire, up the stairs into the fire to die passively. And that's giving up. She's made her choice, but she's giving up. That's what walking into the fire means. And so James killing himself, it's almost poetic. It's another mirror. Water and fire. Fire and water. Maria walks up into the fire to be burned. James goes down into the lake to be drowned. I just noticed that. It's a mirror. It's another mirror. It's a metaphorical mirror that they share. And James, if he can't accept Mary's death, and he doesn't go after Maria, so he's not trapped, and he can't accept what he's done and live with himself, then the way he sees it, he sees it like Angela. The only way to get out is to die, and that's why he does that. He it's not that he doesn't want to live, it's that he can't live with himself. And so let's see what this says. That's my commentary on it. Let's see what this says about what to do to get that ending. Keep your stamina in the red zone, below 50%, as long as you can. Makes sense, so you're closer to death that way, you're taking risks. Examine Angela's knife, so you're thinking about what I talked about with that choice of death. Represents that. Read the suicidal diary on the hospital rooftop. I'm going to take that as at face value because I don't remember that. But yeah, it's a suicidal diary. Read the new message to James on the wall of Neely's bar after the hospital. I believe that's the one that says, what was it? Yes. It says there was a hole here, and then there was a hole here, but now it's gone. I think that's the one that changes to, what's it called? Yeah. There's a way that you could see Mary again, James. But then again, I don't think you'd be going to the same place as she did, or something like that. But it means if he kills him, it's a very ominous and demeaning way of saying, hey, James, if you kill yourself, you're going to hell. Mary went to heaven. You're going to hell. and you know it. And that's very interesting, I think. But it's demeaning, and it's condescending, almost. Well, another topic for another time. But the writing on the wall, kind of funny to put it like that, the red writing on the wall. So many people have asked who made that, and the most common answer is James. It's James's mind that makes that. If you're suicidal, if you're depressed, if one is, I know it is for me, you get a lot of those thoughts, you know? You get a lot of those thoughts. You know what I'm talking about if you've been there. So James is the one who made those. Not literally, but certainly on a meta level. So anyway, and listen to the entire sickbed conversation of Mary and James in the hallway before the final boss. So James, that is James lingering on what he's done. He cannot accept what he's done, and he just has to die for it, you know, before the final boss being Mary, of course. And he does defeat that which is good. He defeats that twisted, horrid, bedridden, Mary nun shape thing, but he still can't get past it. He's defeated the villain within himself, the ultimate evil that's keeping him down, and yet he still can't move on from that, which is very sad. Yeah, so there's that. So then we get to the fourth ending, which the rebirth ending. To achieve the rebirth ending, you must first complete the game once to unlock and collect 4 ceremonial items in a New Game Plus. I believe New Game Plus is the hardest difficulty. Correct me if I'm wrong. The required items are as follows: white chrism on the kitchenette counter. Yeah, book Lost Memories, which, of course, there's a lot to say with these. Obsidian Goblet and Crimson Ceremony for in book. I would like to point out that each one of those, except for Lost Memories, I guess, has a specific color with it, and so much can be read into that. Crimson is obviously red, blood red, that sort of thing. Obsidian is black, so death. White, just plain white, is life, that sort of thing. These colors as symbolism. So much more to say about it, but very quickly, black is death, white is life or rebirth, you know, after baptism or that sort of thing. White clothing, all of that. And crimson is the blood that has been spilled, or the lifeblood within James. One of those two. Once all 4 items have been collected, complete the game normally by defeating the final 2 bosses, and you will receive the rebirth ending. Note that if you collect and use the dog key on the 3rd floor of the hotel, you will instead receive the dog ending, regardless of having the items. So the rebirth, that one's tough. The rebirth ending has James in a rowboat going across the lake, which has got to be symbolic of something, because he drowned in the lake in the other one. So he's going across the lake instead. Instead of leaving, he's sort of embracing Silent Hill as his town, and he is fully connected to Mary. And that, I really... It can't be canon, because, well, if there is a canon, which I don't believe there is, because you have to get it on a second playthrough, and so it can't be canon technically. And so to James hasn't moved on, and he hasn't left. So there was leave, which is moving on and leaving. Maria, which is not moving on and not leaving. What is it? In water, which is leaving but not moving on. And then this is the 4th one, not leaving and not moving on. There's much more to say about it, but we're over the hour mark, and I need to think more about the rebirth ending. Let me know what you think about it, what your theories are. Let me know your favorite ending, your everything about the endings. There are some other secret endings, and then Born from a Wish. I will talk about those in the next video, I've decided. And besides that, thank you guys so much for listening or watching this. The B-roll was obtained from one, let me see, SNH, so Survival Horror Network, that's what it's called, SNH Survival Horror Network, and that's where I got the Silent Hill 2 B-roll from, so big shout out to them and everything. I do not have Silent Hill 2, so I wasn't able to get the stuff myself. And big shout out as well for these ending notes to help me refresh my memory and show me the endings again. Big shout out to SilentHillMemories.net. Great site. If you love Silent Hill 2 and really anything Silent Hill, you absolutely have to check it out. It's a wonderful site with all the details you need to know, besides, you know, video essays or just rambling like I'm doing. And with that, I will wrap up this first real video and send you guys on your way. I don't have an outro planned or anything, but this has been, what is it? What's my channel name? I just created it. Oh, it's so new. Virago's Vizard. Yes, lovely name. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe. It would help me out a whole lot getting this channel off the ground. And I will see you guys in the next one when we talk about the other endings of Silent Hill 2.